In this presentation, I would like to question, and I know it's going to sound crazy, but I'm going to question the need for films to tell stories. Suppose you could imagine a film, any film, one that does not depend on its protagonist, that does not have supporting characters, that does not follow a plot line or have a sequence, events, or actions, and one that does not have cliched stylistic elements like props, costumes, and set design. Now you would ask, and fairly so, what's left in it for it to be called a film? But that is precisely the problem. Commercial narrative cinema has only this to offer. They all begin with the essential cyclical journey of the heroine or the hero. So it starts with the protagonist's normal life. Suddenly they are faced with some new situation that pushes them on a journey filled with trials and tribulations. And if they listen to the man with the long white beard, they succeed. But if they don't, they die. You may think that you have watched a lot of different kinds of films, but actually you've been watching the same film over and over again in numerous avatars. They only vary in the details. So to use another analogy, whether you're eating a Venezuelan arepa or a Mexican tortilla or a Punjabi makai ki roti, you're basically eating the same dish. A cornmeal flatbread that varies only ever so slightly in flavor and texture. You would eat it happily once or twice. But suppose I told you that is all you could eat for the rest of your life. Similarly, you have been fed on a mono diet of films that simply tell stories. This was not always the case when cinema was in its early nascent stage. People were fascinated with the medium and used it in all walks of life. So there were some films that used films as part of their magic tricks, some simulated travel to exotic lands, and psychologists use films to test the limits of the human perception. But after 100 years of the invention of cinema, we still conceive of cinema in one way, and that is the one that tells stories. And very few of us make these films. This passive viewing culture began with the Lumiere brothers, and you may have heard of them. They're often credited as the first filmmakers. But actually, what they owned was a factory that made the celluloid reels, empty celluloid reels. But to advertise their product, they decided to record short films, a train entering a station, people playing snowball fight, their factory workers leaving the factory, and so on. But to their surprise, the people didn't want to buy their films. They were happy to just watch these projections and would often pay repeatedly for them. As this film screening culture grew, circuses all over the place put up tents, and people were charged on the basis of how long they spent inside these cinema tents watching the projections on the screen. But at that time, film about 30 to 60 seconds worth of footage. So that meant that a person would have to watch 10 films to spend just 10 minutes sitting inside a theater. Obviously, this format was not sustainable, as people would walk in and out of the theater or talk to each other between the films. It was Hollywood and the Hollywood studio producers who first found a way to hold the audience's attention for over an hour. The trick was, if you told a story, the audiences would passively and patiently wait till the end of the story before they left their seats. Now, just as Britain had conquered the world through war strategies, what they called war strategies, Hollywood conquered the world market through the building of cinema theaters all around the world. As a result, some of these countries, India for example, their first experience of watching films was these Hollywood films. Now, if you conceive of cinema only in the way that Hollywood has formulated it, then there is no room for creativity. No wonder Bollywood, Tollywood, Mollywood, and so many of the other film industries in our country are nothing but imitations of the Hollywood mode of studio productions. But there have been some films that have resisted the Hollywood profit motive. These films could be documentary films, such as the ones made just when India was a newly independent country. The government funded, through the films division, a lot of freelance documentary filmmakers to go out into the country and shoot films that would educate the masses on how to become good citizens. Luckily for us, we had innovative filmmakers like Pramod Pati, Sukhdev, and Shastri, who made films that stirred up these boring documentary styles and really caught the essence and energy of a new India. Along with these documentary filmmakers, a new cinematic sensibility was arising. Unlike the escapist films of the Bollywood and commercial cinema, the new Indian cinema, or parallel cinema movement as they came to be known, focused on the harsh realities of the oppressed and the underprivileged. They emphasized in their films social problems and the need to address them, such as gender inequality, the gap between the rural and the urban areas, and the huge amount of oppression that the Dalits face by the upper classes. With their passion for using cinema as a tool to better society, their films no doubt had a higher artistic quality than the normal, conventional, commercial fare. But in spite of their artistic creativity or superiority, they still told stories. So what we ended up with was two kinds of the same film. The masala film, or the Bollywood film, as we call them, ones that offer you a kind of fast food experience, and the other, the parallel cinema, that offered you a wholesome, well-balanced morality tale. So when we think of these two options, we wonder, is there a need for a radically different cinema? The more we consume Hollywood and conventional cinema, the more it consumes us. By this I mean, the more you watch masala films and get addicted to them, the more it kills your taste buds, and the less you can appreciate the more subtle flavors like the parallel cinema. So the only way to break free is to experiment with new forms. Radical cinema forces the viewers to experience the reality as we experience it in our day-to-day lives. More than any art form, film is the one that is capable of closely resembling the way that we perceive the world. We have filmmakers like Mani Kaul, who's a pioneering Indian experimental filmmaker, who made his first film, Uski Roti, about a bus driver's wife who patiently waits at the bus stop just to give her husband his lunch. Nothing else happens in this film, and everything unfolds very slowly. So for an untrained viewer, this may seem a very slow movie. Nothing is happening. But actually, Mani Kaul is not interested in telling you the story of the bus driver's wife. Instead, he's trying to make you wait with the bus driver's wife, make you experience her intolerable loneliness. And as a result, these films teach us empathy, and they broaden our life experience. Now, conventional cinema, or the cinema that has been showcased up till now, has been screened in theaters where you, as the audience, have no control over the screening process. But now, with digital technologies, we can all watch films on our personal screening devices. And yet, you wonder why the film industry continues to make films the way that they were made hundreds of years ago. They do not want to lose their power over the audiences. The ideal consumer of a Hollywood or a Bollywood cinema is one that unquestioningly accepts whatever is fed to them. Radical cinema not only revolutionizes the way that we make films, but also the way that we watch them. So there are new kinds of films that are emerging. Expanded cinema, cinema with 2 theater screens and the audience sitting in between it, or a live performance that's synced along with the screening. These films don't allow you to just sit passively in your seats. The stories are no longer told to us. It emerges from our active engagement with the subject. So to wonder, why do we continue to watch films in the same old way that they were made 100 years ago? The answer is that the rich producer only makes films to get richer, and the audience is tricked and seduced into sitting and patiently consuming them. Like any other medium of art, film offers this beautiful space where our imaginations can roam free and where we can conceive of the world in an entirely new way. But Hollywood and Bollywood and all of the other conventional cinemas have trapped you in this prison of the single story or the single kind of film. The only way to break free of it is to radically change the way that we make cinemas and actively participate in delighting over the possibilities that this medium has to offer. Thank you.